And right about when I'm getting into the hang of it, I'm thinking, okay, I did this a few times, but pastor really, I mean, he only has a few rentals. I really need somebody in my life that can show me how to kind of, build this. And just then I was at a women's group and I sat next to this lady that I'd never met before. And I said, hi, like I normally do. I'm Ann. What's your name? And she said, well, my name is, X. And I said, oh, tell me about your, you and your family. And she said, well, I just stay home with my kids and I'm, a stay-at-home mom and happy to do that. My husband owns 50 single family rentals, 50. And I was like, what?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And I said,
I want to hear about this.
And I said, you own 50 houses? And she said, we do. And she said, that's what he does full time. And I said, the magic words, which I came to understand were magic words. And that was, would you introduce me to him?
Welcome to The Breakthrough with Stephen Husted, the show that takes you behind the scenes with successful entrepreneurs, real estate investors, and other movers and shakers in the business world. In each episode, we'll sit down with our guests to explore their personal and professional journeys, including the challenges they faced, the breakthrough moments that propelled them to success, and the strategies and the tactics they used to get there. Get inspired by new ideas and strategies and get to know our guests on a deeper level. Join us for candid conversations, powerful insights, and plenty of breakthrough moments. Please help us grow by subscribing and sharing the podcast, and welcome to the show. Welcome back to The Breakthrough with Stephen Husted. Today we have an inspiring guest joining us, Ann Curry, a former preschool teacher turned savvy real estate investor. Ann's journey from humble beginnings to owning multiple properties is proof to the power of mentorship and seizing opportunities. In this episode, Ann shares her evolution in real estate, emphasizing the importance of patience and continuous learning. We'll hear about how she navigated challenges like financing and market downturns, offering valuable insights for achieving personal and financial growth in the dynamic real estate world. Join us as we hear Ann's story of resilience and wealth building through real estate. Discover how she transformed her life from modest wage to expert investor status. Together, we'll explore the different sides of real estate and why it's key to jump on opportunities even when things get tough. Get ready for a chat full of smart advice, stories that will inspire you. Let's go. Ann, how are you?
I am so good. Thanks for having me on today. Excited to talk to you, Stephen.
Thank you for jumping on. And yeah, I apologize for being sick, but as I was telling you earlier, they got sick again, taking a drink off that Stanley Cup of my daughter's.
Stanley Cup, it does it every time.
Stanley Cup got me in. And then over the weekend, I'm stressed out going, I can't cancel on.
And I told you.
I don't want to lose my voice.
No. I told you, we're realists over here. We totally get it. Yeah, but I'm just glad you're feeling better.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. I'm getting there. But interesting enough, so you know how I reached out to you? I'll tell you what I was doing. I was driving to Redwood City to meet with one of my business partners, and I was listening to the Landlord Diaries.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And I had 2 hours essentially. So I listened to one going up and one going back. Reached out to you right when I got home, actually, which was funny. Yeah, and that's kind of how some of my guests happen. I just get inspired and I go, I'm just going to reach out. Who knows?
Love it.
Maybe they'll say yes, maybe they'll say no.
Yeah, love it.
Maybe they won't respond, but I'm going to give it a try. But I did really like that conversation that you guys had, and thought you had a pretty cool backstory.
Yeah, I've been at this for a while, and we have very humble beginnings, so we've come a long way in about 30 years, and love to share my story because I always say I would have nothing if it hadn't have been for the people that went before me and taught me what they knew. So I'm an open book, and I love to chat, and I love to inspire people, as best I can, and educate them on how to do real estate because it's been so great for our family.
Yeah, and it's such a I think one thing about real estate that's really cool, and I was thinking about this recently, is you never really master it.
Oh,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
There's always something going on, whether it's like your back end office to analyzing a deal or there's so much to it,
Yeah,
right?
so
Doesn't that
many
keep you like hooked
facets.
in it?
It does because there's always something to learn. And then, just when you feel like you have something down, like a strategy or a tactic, then either the market shifts or there's a new strategy and tactic. I mean, there's always something more to learn. And I just feel like it's this endless ocean of, stuff in real estate that you can go in so many directions. I mean, sometimes when
Yeah,
people say, well, I want to get started in real estate, it's like, well, what angle do you want to start in? Do you want to be a salesperson? Do you want to be an investor? Do you want to be in property management? I mean, there's so many different roles and hats that you can play. Yeah.
absolutely. So what do you tell people that reach out to you, whether it's clients, friends, family? Do they because you help buyers and sellers buy real
I
estate,
do.
and then you deal with investors, I would
I do.
imagine. Okay. So how do you home them in on one? Do you tell them to kind of like hyper focus on one and get that down and then go to something else?
How do I guide my well, first I go in asking questions because I want to
Yeah.
know what are they interested in because I could give them a whole spiel, but if they have no interest, then it does them no good. So when I meet somebody for the first time, I ask them, what are your goals? What are your thoughts? What have you ever, and when you think of real estate, what do you think of? And I try to get inside their head. And then we kind of start on that path and I guide them along that path. Having done this for 30 years and worn the investor hat and worn the salesperson hat and worn the property manager hat. I understand the different roles well enough that I can just kind of help guide them to what they want to do, not what I have planned for them to do. So the conversation is very um, we really kind of hone in on their own idea and then we help grow that and move that along.
And do a lot of the clients that come to you pretty fresh in real estate, or do you have a mixture of
Yeah, we have
levels?
a mixture of levels, anywhere from I don't even own my own home, but I want to own rentals to I already own rentals and now I want to learn how to scale, or I own single family and I want to learn how to buy multifamily to I have a bunch of stuff. How do I kind of work my way out of it? I mean, all the way from like beginning to, growing all the way back down to scaling back down. So I have one of my clients owns, I think 30 single family houses, but she's ready to get out. She's like at the retirement age. She's like, help me, go back to none. And how do I do that gracefully? How do I do that successfully without paying too much tax? I mean, so we kind of run the whole gamut.
Let me back up to your beginnings
Yeah.
here. So you started in 2010?
Well, I got my license then, but I really started in the late 90s.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
kind of
So it's been
it's
a while.
been a long
Okay.
time. Yeah. So I was trained to be a teacher and I was a preschool teacher out of, after finishing college and that was my first job and I was making $5 an hour. And yeah, for about 5 years, I did that, a whopping $5 an hour. Now that would be more like $20 an hour now, but still not,
Today,
yeah. So
inflation
not
adjusted.
inflation adjusted, but it's still not going to get you to where I wanted to be. I mean, I watched my parents not be able to retire. We had a lovely, loving home, but if there was any stress, it was always around not having enough money. So that was the constant theme. So, as I'm a preschool teacher, I'm kind of looking at my future and saying, I've got to make a shift here because I don't want to fall into that same, money stress that I watched my mom and dad go through. So when I had my first baby, my son, who's 30 years old now, and the father of my grandson, who's just my little pride and joy. But when he was a little guy, he was about 8 weeks old. And I remember holding him and I was still, a preschool teacher making $5 an hour. And I thought, how am I going to help this little guy through college and how are we going to retire? And it was interesting, Stephen. It was just like this thought. It was just this thing that came inside my head and it was just like real estate. And that's all it was. It was two words, real estate. And I didn't
So you
know.
just randomly thought about that?
I feel like it was the serendipitous moments. I mean, I look back at my
Yeah.
life and I see a series of miracles that happened. And I feel like that thought was my first miracle because it was like, I feel like I didn't come up with that. How would I have just come up with that randomly? But that was it. There was no path attached. There was no instruction manual on how to do that. And this is back in the early 90s. So imagine like, we didn't have bigger pockets. We didn't have Stephen doing podcasts and telling us all these things. All we had was human beings, that we could talk to one on one, like our friends. And we had the library. So we had free books and maybe a few like in middle of the night infomercials, Carlton Sheets, I think was doing something back then.
Wow.
And
Yeah, that's crazy.
yeah, so that was so our humble beginnings. My husband is a pastor of a church and he was making $14,000 a year at the time. So it was just me making $5 an hour, him making $14,000 a year. And I had this dream of doing real estate, but I didn't know what that meant. And I had three very important people show up in my life. They all became mentors at different stages. And our first mentor was the pastor of the church that we worked at. And he owned a few rental properties and thought that was kind of interesting. One day he was driving in the car with my husband and he said, Dean, you should really think about buying a house. I own a house. I think you could own a house. And he looked at him. He said, well, we don't have a down payment for a house. And he said, well, you should ask a family member. So we approached, our Aunt Sharon and we bought our first house for $62,500. It was a little 2-bedroom rambler that needed a bunch of work. And the down payment back then was $6,250. And we borrowed it from our Aunt
Wow.
Sharon. Good old FHA, they allow you to borrow the down payment funds. And so we bought this little house. And then a few months later, my husband was in the car with this gentleman who, was our first mentor, the pastor of our church. And he said, now I want you to think of that little house as a little box. And I want you to think of that box as a place that's holding money. So when that little box becomes worth more, you can actually take the money out of that box and you should go buy another box. What he was talking about was doing a refinance, pulling the cash out and go buy another one. So we thought, okay, well, we fixed this little house up and then it was worth more. And so we refinanced. We did exactly what he taught us to do. It was almost kind of like a pseudo BRRRR, although there was not that acronym way back then,
Yeah,
but it was like
definitely
buy, rehab, then refinance, and then repeat. So he basically taught us how to do that. And so we refinanced. We pulled, I think it was about $60,000 out of that house. We went and bought another house. We fixed up that house to live in because, again, we bought it as an owner occupant and we turned the first house into our first rental. So now,
what was the timeline?
What was the timeline? It was about 8 years. 8 years. Yeah, we lived. So I had that little thought of real estate when Drew was 8 weeks old. And we lived in that little tiny 2-bedroom house until the kids were 6 and 8 years old. So it took, we have this saying, get rich slow, because a lot of times, especially like with us, we started with nothing. It was a slower path, but it definitely was getting rich. It just was a slow path to get there. But that was our humble beginnings. So I say, I was maybe, if you're going to have a category called least likely to succeed in real estate, I probably would have put myself in that category. I remember I was in my 20s. And again, we didn't have cell phones. We didn't have the internet. And I remember fixing up that first little house and driving to Home Depot, looking for people, usually men, because they were mostly at Home Depot back then, and tapping them on the shoulder and saying, excuse me, sir, I have this issue with my toilet and this is what it's doing. What do I do? And he would, I'm in my 20s. He would walk me over to the plumbing aisle. He'd say, see that little thing right there? Buy that. It has instructions on the back. Just go do that and that'll fix your problem. So I drive back home and that's how I fixed up my first house. So mentor number 1 taught us really how to even get started. And that was the role that he played. And then I had 2 more very important mentors that came into my life that helped me scale over the last, 30 years.
And how did they come into your life?
Yeah. So once we did that first house and we had some success at turning our original little 2-bedroom house into a rental, and it worked. And we moved into the second house and bought that as an owner occupant. It was a wreck, but we fixed that one up. And so now I'm kind of getting the hang of it. And right about when I'm getting into the hang of it, I'm thinking, okay, I did this a few times, but you know, pastor really, I mean, he only has a few rentals. I really need somebody in my life that can show me how to kind of, build this. And just then I was at a women's group and I sat next to this lady that I'd never met before. And I said, hi, like I normally do. I'm Anne. What's your name? And she said, well, my name is, X. And I said, oh, tell me about your, you and your family. And she said, well, I just stay home with my kids and I'm, a stay-at-home mom and happy to do that. My husband owns 50 single family rentals, 50. And I was like, what?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And I said,
I want to hear about this.
And I said, you own 50 houses? And she said, we do. And she said, that's what he does full time. And I said, the magic words, which I came to understand were magic words. And that was, would you introduce me to him? And she said, of course I would. So I met him for coffee. He was about 15 years older than me. And I just said, would you show me how you did that? And that started a 7-year kind of mentoree relationship where I just said, I will show up. I'll clean your floors. I'll scrub whatever you want me to scrub. I'll hack bushes. I'll do whatever you want me to do if you'll teach me. And he did for 7 years, showed me how to buy what would be my third house because we had the one little rental. And he said, well, there's this thing called hard money. If you don't have any money and you can buy a house and then they'll give you the money to fix it up. And then once you do that, then you can put a renter in it. And once you have a renter in it, then you can refinance it and you can pull your money back out. And then we're going to go do this again. But you're going to buy the houses that I tell you to buy because I know how to buy them. And so basically, he was describing the BRRRR strategy again, and that's how he had grown his rental portfolio from 0 to 50. At that moment, Stephen, when I met him and I got to know his portfolio, I wrote down on a piece of paper, I will own 50 single family houses. I will own 50 single family houses. And I kept that little piece of paper by my bed for years. And do you know that about 16 years later, I had the opportunity to buy 50 single family houses in one transaction. One transaction. It was the joy of my lifetime and showed me that we don't always know how we're going to do something, but if we put it out there and we put the goal out there, it will show up in very mysterious, miraculous ways that we just really can't understand the time that we write it down on paper. So that was cool. So he was mentor number 2 and really taught me.
Are you still in contact with him?
Yeah, I am. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I am.
Where does he, and is he from the same area?
From the same area. He actually was where you live. So kind of the San Jose area. And when moved, when I met his wife, they had just moved to Tacoma because he realized that Tacoma had a lot of opportunity. We're kind of middle class, we're blue collar, we have a lot of jobs, we're surrounded by water and mountains, and we really can't grow any farther. But our price points were which you could buy a house and still get some cash flow. And we had the appreciation. So he kind of moved up here and created his whole
for the opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah. And I am so grateful to him and, he and his wife together for becoming such wonderful friends and wonderful mentors. And, and it was neat because, in time, I was able to bring him some value as well because I found this house and he always told me, he said, if you find a house and it has a big side yard, he said, I always want you to tell me about it. So I found this house. It had a big side yard and it was a gentleman that, his mother owned it. And we went to the same gym and we got to talking. And he said, my mom really needs to sell her house, but it's a wreck, but it's got a big yard. So I said, well, let me go look at it. And I brought my mentor with me. And we were able to actually split it into 4 different lots. We fixed up the house, and that was my kind of contribution back to the partnership. And we did that together. And then I learned how to lot segregate, and I learned how to, that was a flip, and it was selling off lots. And so therefore, my education was growing. So he was just such a wonderful mentor. And I was glad I could bring him a little value, not as much as he brought me, but which
Sounds like I think that is a pretty awesome payback
yeah,
in
yeah,
a lot of ways.
yeah,
He asked for something and then you got it
yeah,
and brought it right to him. Like, hey,
yeah.
is this the one? He's like, matter of fact, it
Yeah,
is.
we ended up partnering
We
on
like
some other
this.
stuff too. And so that was fun as well. Yeah.
No, that's
Yeah.
great. So during this period of time as a mentor, do you remember some points that he brought up that really like were light bulb moments for you that you just went, oh,
Yeah.
like you brought up the hard money. And I think that the
Yeah.
hard money part, I hear this one, and I know you hear this one as well. People, I don't have a lot of money. I don't know where to start. You find a good deal. There's plenty of people out there that will give you money.
And he
If
taught
you
me
got the
that.
right deal.
Yep. He taught me that. He said, don't worry, just find the deals, Anne. Don't worry about what
Yeah.
you're going to do with them. Don't worry about the money. Just find the deal. Bring them to me, and I'm going to teach you what to do with the deal. But if it's a great deal, and then he also taught me how to walk away from stuff. Is like, not every deal is a great deal. He taught me patience. He taught me like, hey, we're going to
100%.
wait for the really great houses. So, I mean, you could go out any day and just, spend $100,000 on a house, but we're going to find the house that has the most opportunity. So like I would wait for the 5-bedroom house with 2 bath with a full basement that I could create more living square footage for $100,000 rather just buying a 3-bedroom turnkey house. So he taught me, the nuts and bolts of how to look at a deal and know like what I need to buy it for, what I can put into it to make it work. And he taught me Section 8. So he was the one that really, which was key because we own a lot of affordable housing now. But he taught me that, Section 8, these are just people and they just happen to get, some of their rent paid by the government. It doesn't make them a good tenant. It doesn't make them a bad tenant. You got to screen just like you would. But he taught me the love of Section 8. He introduced me to our local housing authority. And I remember the day he said, hey, we're going to go on a little field trip. And I said, oh, where we're going? He said, I don't know. Just, kind of don't wear your work clothes. Just, wear normal clothes. So usually I'm covered in paint, I've got my paint works, sweatshirt on and the whole thing. And so he marched me down to the Tacoma Housing Authority. And he knew all the people there because he owned so many rentals that he was, they really looked to him as one of their landlord resources and would ask him questions when they were changing their rules and their regulations and all that stuff. Anyways, had a great relationship with them. And he marched me up to the director of the Tacoma Housing Authority and introduced me as a future one of their preferred housing providers. He said, this is Anne. She's going to own a bunch of rentals. He was speaking it into me and also introducing me to this, what I thought was a very important person. And he said, just watch, and she's going to be one of your great housing providers. And then, within 15 years later, we bought a low income affordable housing project, an apartment building of 60 units. And it was actually, the seller was the Tacoma Housing Authority. And the Tacoma Housing Authority was the seller of the 50 single family homes that I was going to buy. But this was years earlier. And he just taught me the importance of having great relationships and having a great reputation out in the community as a very fair housing provider. And he's instilled all of that into me. And we try to, be that same way today. So
you have some great stories.
It's been a great journey.
Yeah. And real estate definitely is a journey.
Yes.
In so many ways.
Yes.
It's very creative. And one thing I brought up to you earlier was I love the fact that it's always different.
Always different.
Always feel like it's always has unique challenges. There's always something to work on. I was hesitant to post this yesterday on stories. And I think the reason why I was hesitant, I was like, oh, maybe I'm acting like an amateur on this thought and what I'm doing with my taxes. And I should have done this earlier. And what it was is every year at the end of the year, we have a checklist. My assistant goes through it and goes, okay, we need to get, all these documents prepared. We start, putting everything together. And one of the biggest things is my bookkeeper comes back and goes, hey, I need your 12-month statements for your credit
Mm.
cards. And I didn't know how to execute on connecting all that to him. I didn't want him to have personal
Mhm.
information, to be honest. And then, so I just reached out to all the credit card companies and said, hey, how can I is there a way to do this so that it's just view
Yeah.
only? I just want him to get the
Yeah.
statements. I've had everything else pretty systemized, but that was like the last thing that I just didn't want to let go of. And they're like, oh yeah, we get this. We'll set them on their password. Now it's all
Love
done.
it.
It was such a big thing,
Yeah.
and I know I was in my head going, I know there's probably other people going, well, you could have used this software that's tied to this. And when you start to scale in real estate, you almost have to have all your systems in place in the very beginning,
Yeah, yeah.
but
But the
isn't it funny how you start to go through it and it's almost like whack-a-mole. Here's one issue. I don't want to make that issue again.
Yeah,
Here's another
for
issue.
sure.
I don't want to do that again. You try to learn. You're constantly just trying to put the puzzle
Yeah,
together. Does that
constantly.
make
Yeah,
sense?
but in real estate, well, with anything, it's like you don't know what you don't know. It's like you don't really know you
Yeah.
need the system until the system calls out and tells you it's needed, right? I mean, that's
Yes.
with everything. And you know, I as you scale and you grow, and you've learned this too, because you've got a few virtual assistants, and so you have to leverage more of your time off to other people. So real estate is
Yes.
leverage heavy. So you're leveraging other people's money a lot of times, banks, hard money lenders, partners. You're leveraging your time. So you're hiring assistants. And then one assistant isn't enough. So you hire another assistant. And then another
Yes.
assistant isn't enough. And so you hire a third assistant. And then all of a sudden you're hiring a marketing person. And then, you get so many buyers that you're working with that you hire a buyer's agent, and you really don't really know what you need until you need it. And then it's like, oh, holy moly, I need this, but I need it. It's quick. Right. And so
Yes.
that's
How
part
are
of the
you with
learning.
time?
How am I with time?
How are you with your time
Yeah.
management? I struggle with it.
Mhm.
I make that known. I try my best, and I don't know, it's my age, because I'm early 50s.
Yeah.
Time is like everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you really aware? Are you always trying to improve your time, and how do you treat that?
Yeah. Well, I would confess that I am a head down, pretty disciplined person by nature. So I feel like that is not always a gift. Sometimes it's there's some downsides to that, but head down work is not an issue for me. So I have to kind of practice going the other way and taking more
Yeah.
time off. But if something needs to be done, I'm going to do it. And I tend to be an early morning person, so I'm usually up by 4:45, 5. I go get my workout in, which is the best way to start my day, because it's making that promise to yourself. It's getting up, putting your workout clothes on, getting in the car, being cold, driving to the gym, getting your workout in, and then you're on your way home and you're like, okay, I'm ready for my day. And so then I
Right.
pound out, but I am usually by, the later the day goes, the more I'm kind of my energy starts to wane. So I'm kind of like a pumpkin, Cinderella's pumpkin. It's like I expire after a certain time and then I'm out. But um, so I
What
think,
time is that for you?
oh, like
So,
my
and the reason why I
brain
bring that up,
starts to shut off around 7
1 or
p.m.
2?
Oh, no. Well, once I hit like 7 or 8, I'm like, okay, I can't think anymore. I gotta turn it off. But what I think about real estate, and we talked about it being there's so much variety in it. I think that keeps me going. It's like not
Oh,
every
yeah.
day is the same. So like yesterday I had a day full of appointments, and then other days I'm like just head down at my computer cranking stuff out. And then the next day might be a little bit of mix, but not one day is ever the same as the next day. And I think that keeps me fresh. I
I love
wouldn't
that
be a
part.
guy. I've always said that purgatory to me would be a desk job where I can never leave, because like
Well,
I'll
gosh,
take a I'll
yes.
take a
I
call.
couldn't even do
I
it.
know I'm the master of like doing two things at once. So like I'll take a call on a walk. I'll
I
listen
do
to a
too.
podcast on a walk. I try to kind of kill, but I love it. And I think with anything, if you love it, you have way more energy and grace for it. And I have a lot of grace for real
Yes.
estate because I really do love it and enjoy it. Now, do we love every part of it? Absolutely not. When you have a challenge that's really difficult to solve and you're just like, I just want this to be over. I just want a solution. Those kind of things, it doesn't always go our way, but the benefits of it, outweigh the challenges most of the time.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I I had a job, I think it was right out of high school for Wells Fargo, and it was a desk job. And I think it was something where I was taking paper and I remember I had to like use that sticky stuff to kind of turn the
Yeah.
paper. And I'm going through it. I remember it was like maybe first day. I think got to the second day and I remember I was at lunch. I'm like, yeah, I don't
I
like
can't
this.
do this. Yeah.
I
I'm
just
I'm
I just
out.
got in my car and left. I was like, I'm done.
Goodbye.
I'm out of this
Yeah.
place. This is not it.
Exactly. I know.
I was just no.
Yeah.
But I've had my longest career that I was doing before real estate. I'm a licensed hairdresser. And doing hair is very similar to real estate in a lot of ways. It's always
Yeah.
different. You're dealing with
Yeah.
personalities and people, clients. So they are very similar and it's kept my interest to this
Yeah.
day. And I have not quit hair.
Oh, you haven't?
I still
You
do
do?
hair. I
Oh
still
my
do hair.
gosh. Okay, now
still do
I
hair.
know who to call when I'm down in San Jose.
Yeah, I still do hair 2 days a week. And everyone's like, why aren't you retiring? And I go, you know what? I love it still. It's
Yeah.
creative. And I have this clientele that I've had for 20 plus years.
Mhm.
And I just like seeing them.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
that simple.
And you could,
It's that simple.
yeah, and at some
So I've
level,
cut
you
it.
could
I've,
probably just so automated for you because you've done it for so long, you in a way can kind of turn part of your brain off, and I mean, I don't know if
yes.
you're like this, but there are certain parts of investing in real estate, and you have a lot of moving parts all the time, and it takes a lot of brain energy, right? Because you're thinking through and you're figuring out, and you're making things happen, and it's. So I think at times, if you have something else that takes your attention, that's a little bit more like you can shut off that part of your brain. I'm sure that that's probably a recharge for you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And it's also a really cool, the salon is the reason why I got into real estate
Mm.
in a lot of ways. A lot of my clients were, tech engineers and didn't have a lot of creativity. And a lot of them would say, hey, I'm going to go look at this house. It's in Los Altos. I'll tell this story a lot because this is the big story that got me into doing real estate. I had a client that was looking at a fixer-upper in Los Altos. And he's like, hey, can you come with me and check it out? I just need your creativity and tell me what I can do. So we went and I'm like, oh, cool. I like the neighborhood. That's first and
Yeah.
foremost. I like the
Yeah.
neighborhood. I don't even know what I'm doing, but I'm just telling him my thoughts as we're going. I'm like, all right, I like the street, good street. Get to the house and I'm looking at it. I'm like, well, you're going to have to knock that wall out. You're going to open up that space.
Mhm.
Oh, you could do floor to ceiling windows in this because look at that's the hillside. So bring in some more light, like put a bigger window there. And he was just like, okay. Got done. And I go, he's like, I think I'm going to write an offer. I'm like, great, I have an agent. She's my client at the salon.
Oh no! So you're giving away
And
all
so
that business.
So I connected them, and he said to me afterwards, he's like, you need to get your real estate license.
Yeah,
He's like,
good.
you just sold me a, I think it was like 2.5, something in that range at that point. This is a long time ago.
A single tier.
He's like, you just sold me a house. And I'm like, I don't know. I can't get into real estate. It sounds like being a car salesman. There's no way. I'm an artist. He's like, no, you really should. And I helped a couple others. And then he goes, why don't you go home and calculate what a commission would look like on this? And your friend just gave you a $700 check. Why don't you figure that out?
Yes.
And I did. And at first, it wasn't really about the money part of it. I really liked the creative side of it. And then, obviously, once I got my license, the market crashed in 2008.
Perfect
Like, wait, what am
timing.
I in?
Perfect timing.
It
Yeah.
was. How was that for you? Because you were already building up your portfolio prior to 2008.
Yeah. Um,
So what
yeah.
what kind of headwinds did you have on
Yeah.
that?
We actually, by the grace of God, weathered 2008 pretty good because, this was
Interesting.
coming out of the mentorship from, my second mentor that taught me how to buy right. And we had tenants in all of our single family, and we didn't own, nearly what we own now. So think of what we own, what we own now. We just had a tiny little bit of that back then. So maybe 10 single family rentals, and they were all filled with tenants, and a lot of them section 8. So we were getting checks and we were getting paid through 2008. But I was nervous. When that went down, I remember, well, my brother is in the financial industry. And when 2008 was happening, I would call him and I'd be like, this is crazy. I just need some feedback from you. You look at it from a different, vantage point than me. And these were interesting words that I'll never forget. But my brother said to me, in every market, there's opportunity. And I
Yeah,
just kept repeating that
absolutely.
instead of going into fear. I just would repeat to myself, in every market, there's opportunity. And so I started thinking, how do I leverage what's going on out there? And it's horrible what's happening to people. I hated the suffering and the sadness of it. I really did. But I kept thinking what John said to me was, how do where's the opportunity here? And that's when we started, borrowing a little bit more hard money, buying little houses for 70 grand, putting 20,000 into them and selling them for 150. And that was really the beginning of a very more robust flipping business. So under my real
What
estate.
year was that?
So that was, yeah, right in 2008, 2009. And, when lenders weren't lending on investment property. So again, we go back to all the market shifts. Just when you're getting your strategy in real estate kind of solid, and I was buying rentals and I was refinancing and putting
Time to
tenants in
change.
them, then 2008 happened. And why did 2008 even happen? Because they were giving out bad loans. So then, do you remember, Stephen, when lenders were like pulling back all their investor product and they weren't giving
Oh
out
yeah.
loans for investment property? So there was no loan.
Oh yeah.
So unless you had buckets of cash under your mattress, you were kind of dead in the water. So I thought, okay, well, how do I leverage the opportunity out there? So we were buying little houses, dinky houses, and we were fixing them up and we were selling them. Instead of putting them in our rental portfolio, we were just flipping them. And I was making, 20 or 30,000 on each house. And I thought, well, this is good because I'll just kind of save up this money. And when lending comes back around to being able to buy more rental real estate, then I'll just put that money back into rentals. Cause I'm really, what my second mentor really taught me was, try to reinvest your, commissions, your flip money back into owning rentals. Really, the game is how many rentals can you own? So yeah, during
On all levels, on different
yeah, yeah,
equity, cash flow,
yeah,
taxes.
exactly. I had a friend that lived in Arizona. Arizona is our second favorite place to go. And I had a friend that lived down there, and we were buying little 3-bedroom, 2-bath houses that were only 3 years old. Phoenix area got decimated. Every other house was in
Yes.
foreclosure, if you remember. So we were buying these
Yes.
3-year-old, 3-bedroom, 2-bath houses at auction for 30 grand. And all we had to do was paint and carpet because they're only 3 years old, but they got beat up. People just kind of beat them up a little bit. Paint, carpet for about 15 grand, and we were selling off for 80. And so we were chugging on that. So that was an opportunity. Our own neighborhood backyard for flipping was an opportunity. And I really learned then how to leverage more team, more contractors, more hard money. And I just kept doing that until the lending came back for investment property, which took a while. that took a long time. I mean, I don't think we really saw investor loans come back until maybe 2017, 18-ish. There was a good solid chunk of time there where you just couldn't use, there was no product for that.
Were you in Tacoma? Were you in Tacoma at that
Hmm.
point
Yeah.
still? Okay. And then, so I know here when we were going through that, the market was just shifting down so
Hmm.
much, like month after month.
Hmm.
You weren't running into any problems with the properties you were flipping with like appraisals and the values and like the buyers getting loans, or was it just a different type of market? Because I know here in San Jose, we'd have buyers in contract and literally they would close escrow when our house would be worth 50,000 less or
Yeah.
100,000. Like we had a lot of problems. We had a lot of problems on both sides. Like the sellers were going through issues with short sales or foreclosures. And then the buyers were going through these big problems because they would close and then, you know, the value would drop.
Yeah. Yeah. And
So were you guys going through
I
that
think
too?
our area was had a little less bumps, like your area
Yeah.
just got decimated and it went so quickly. Ours kind of
Yes.
it went down, but it was a little slower to drop, and we weren't quite as severe as other parts of the country. I think because there really isn't anywhere else to go into. I mean, we definitely saw the drops, of course, but we were buying. When we were flipping, we were buying at the most bottom we could possibly get, and to make sure that we got in and out so fast that the natural values weren't dropping in that I couldn't just turn around and sell it. So we were trying to be in and out in like 8 weeks. And we weren't trying to make home runs every time. We were just like, if we could make 20 to 30,000 and just be done. We're not trying to do these big long projects, and we just kind of want to be in and out. So we did that, and that kind of started the larger flipping operation that we still are doing today.
A
So
natural
natural
progression.
progression, and that's what I tell a lot of people that are just getting started. It's like you don't have to have all the answers. Maybe you want to do all these things. You want to be an investor in rentals. You want to flip. You want to own multifamily. I said, don't try to do that all at once. It's like, again, get rich slow. You start on
Yes.
one, and then you can master that, and then you add and you master that, and then you add on and you can master that. This isn't, we're not trying to live a whole lifetime in 3 years here. We want to make educated, thoughtful decisions so that you do have a long run, that you don't make a big mistake at the beginning and then you get sour on real estate, because real estate can be so good. But, having people that have been there, done that, like you, Stephen, and myself and others that are showing people the way is so important, to have somebody that's actually done it in your world that can take you by the hand and say, this is how we start. This is where we're going to go. And I will help you, just like the mentors helped me. I would have nothing if it weren't been for those people in my life that were willing to just walk along beside me and help me and answer the questions as they come up, because there's so many. It's
Yes.
like a path, it's like
It's so
standing at the edge of a forest and all you can see is trees, but you're supposed to get to the other side somehow. And it's not like a straight line. It's like you got to kind of zig and zag, and you just need somebody to show you through the trees to get to the other side. So that's, what you and I can do for people. So that's why I'm so behind what you're doing out there on your
yeah.
podcast, showing people the way.
Thank you. Yeah, I took on two I mentored two students last year and it just happened organically. Had two clients, um, one from the salon who I've helped sell houses, help her sell a couple houses, and another was a referral. And I took them on for 6 months and took them from point A to B, helped them get their LLC set up, bank account, how to pick a market, how to put a team together, how to find a property manager, gave them the contractor talk,
Hmm.
like my really bad experience with
Yeah.
contractors,
Yeah.
all the way down to, hey, you're in this C neighborhood, and your property sitting vacant during the winter months. You might want to get your HVAC out and your water heater out of the property.
Hmm.
You might want to get that in storage. You might want to talk to your property manager about that. Well, why? Property's going to sit vacant
Hmm.
and you just never know. somebody could take that opportunity to break into it, and it's
Yep.
gone. And it's all those little things that I've learned the hard way.
Yeah.
So I love to be able to pass it to them. And it's funny because they both closed on properties and they're like, that was really smooth. I'm like, but it was really smooth because I connected you to a really strong property manager.
Mm-hmm.
You had a really good reputable
Mm-hmm.
contractor right off the bat.
Mm-hmm.
It could have went the complete
Yep.
opposite if you were just out there on your own.
Yep.
And back when you got into real estate, it was a much different period of time. Like you said, there wasn't Bigger Pockets. There wasn't YouTube. Because I remember in 2004, 5, I went to a seminar. When you go and you hear somebody talk about how to flip houses, and then you leave the seminar and they have like a audio tape that you buy from them. And I remember getting that, nothing happened. I remember buying the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, reading that at the beach in Hawaii, got that like, okay, this is where I got to go. And it took years from that point to finally get to that. I didn't have a mentor. I just jumped in as an agent and watched the market crash and kind of took the wave.
Yeah, I know. And it's just like so important to have the people that go before us, and I mean, that's how it happened for me. Everybody has their own story, but yeah, it's been the mentors. I had a third mentor that taught me how to buy multifamily. So we had, had this little single family rental portfolio, and then, we were flipping during the downturn, and I again had this dream, like, I want to own a 20-unit apartment building. That was my big dream. To me, that was scary to write down. It's like 20 units.
Right.
Wow, that's big. And I was at a fundraiser dinner with my husband, and this gentleman sat down next to me, and I introduced myself like I do. And I said, "Hi, I'm Ann. What's your name?" And he said, "My name's John." And I said, "Oh, hi, John. What do you do?" And he said, "Well, I build big apartment buildings." And I was like, "Okay, can you tell me what you did to do that?" And we sat at this fundraiser dinner, and I think we ignored everyone else, which is embarrassing to say. And we talked for 2 hours during this thing. And I was asking about syndications and this and that, and he was like, "Syndications, you know that word?" Again, this is before podcasts and all the education out there. But when I get on a topic, I'm just like ravenous. Like, I want to know all about it. I want to read everything, go to the library and all this stuff. So he introduced me, he invited me to his office the following day. He said, "Just come to my office at 10 a.m. and we'll talk about multifamily." And so we sat there in his office for 2.5 hours. And I said to him, "I want to own 20-unit apartment building. I know that seems really scary and really big." And he looked at me and he goes, "Oh, you can do better than that." And he introduced me to his commercial agent. And within about 18 months, I closed on a 60-unit apartment building with his help. And he became my multifamily mentor. So again, I have this theme in my life where it's all been mentors, and which is again why we love to host free events where people can come and hear about investing, different topics, and where we, and also take people under our wing and just say, "Where do you want to go? Let me help you. Let me guide you. Let me show you the way. And if I don't know the answer, I'll introduce you to somebody that does, with our network." So so that has been just the game changer for me.
What was your thoughts once you had closed on the apartment complex, and then got through it, all said and done? You did a value add to it or stabilized it, and once you had it operating, what was your thought from thinking lower for like a 20 unit compared to doing the 60?
It's not any harder.
What was your thought?
No, it just is more units, but all it was just a big fat burr, really, because I bought it low. We did $1 million rehab to it. Well, I would say our budget was 1.5 million, but I came in under budget and I did all the work for $1 million. So we automatically $500,000. We already had $500,000 equity that I didn't have to spend bank money. So it was a lot part of our loan. And then we refinanced it, and I had a partner because I didn't have the financial backing. I didn't have the cash to buy the 60 unit by myself. And so, every purchase has a little story, and every story
Absolutely.
is a series of things that you have to overcome. So when I had the goal and I presented it to my mentor, and they brought me the 60 unit, I didn't have the money, and I didn't have the personal financial statement to get a loan for 60 units. So I got the deal. Back to what we were talking about earlier today. It's like you find the deal and the money will follow. Well, I heard people talk
Absolutely.
about that, but I had never really experienced that for myself. It's like I always thought you had to find the money and then go find the deal. But if the people before us really were right. It's like you have the great deal, the money will follow. So I've had this deal, and my commercial agent sat down with me for an hour and a half and taught me how to present this deal to a potential partner. So it's like, okay, this is what you say, and here's all the numbers. I'm going to highlight all the stuff that I want you to talk to them about. And I really want you to emphasize this number down here. And that was going to be our profit and our cash flow and all that. So I rehearsed it and I practiced it, and I practiced it on my husband. And I just said to my husband, I said, well, who do we know that we think has some cash? And he's like, well, I mean, I could think of maybe 3 people. Why don't you call this person first? So I called that person and I said, can we meet for coffee? And I was, Stephen, to say that I was nervous. I was driving down there. I was shaking. I could feel in the perspiration, and I was all hot, and I was just like, oh my gosh, I, barely slept the night before, but I had this thing rehearsed, and we sat down for coffee and I went through the whole thing. I'm sure I wasn't very fluid or very graceful about it, but I got through it. And I looked at him and I said, well, what do you think? And he said, yeah, let's do it. And
Oh, that
and I
sounds
was like,
crazy.
oh, okay, let's do it. And so it felt way bigger than me, but hey, we did it, and it was ended up being an absolute home run. So for my confidence, getting through that first big deal was huge for me, because here I was, I was going from flipping houses that were like $30,000 remodels to $1.5 million remodel, but it went really, really well. Of course, I had my mentors to kind of lean on, and they helped me divide, kind of figure out the budget. And then, we were able to kind of get contractors to bid under budget. And, we walked into our refinance with an extra $500,000, and we were able to refinance. I paid my partner back his whole entire down payment. So within a year, he had his whole entire down payment repaid. And then we split the equity. So the value of the building, by 50%, and all the cash flow by 50%. And we were partners in that for about 10 years. And then he wanted to bow out of real estate completely because he was much older than me. And I was able to buy him out. So we own that building today. And it was an absolute home run. And it was like the perfect burr. Now, it wasn't without hard work and effort and nervousness and all that stuff, but it was a real confidence booster. It's like, oh my goodness, if I can do that, I think I can do whatever I put my mind to. To me, that was my big kind of win.
You have your thoughts, then you have your doubts,
Mm-hmm.
and then you get into the mix of this particular deal. You break friction,
Mm-hmm.
and it's almost then gives you the confidence to just now I can do that. And it's almost like a stepping stone,
Yeah.
because now you can think even bigger, because you're like, okay, well, I did the 60. I was starting at 20. Now I'm up at 60. What's next?
Yeah. And it was right after
Yeah.
that. So the same seller owned the 50 single family houses that I ended up buying, and I
Oh,
bought them with the
wow.
same partner. So, they came to me about 2 years after buying that apartment building, and they said, well, hey, we have these 50 houses, and that transaction went so well with you on the 60 unit that we really don't want to take this to market. We just want to know, do you want to buy them? And I immediately said yes. I mean, just like, yes. And then I thought later, I'm like, how am I going to do that? Again, it's like the how
Gotta figure
shows up
go
later. Yeah.
backwards.
And I approached my partner. It took about 18 months to put that whole deal together because it was very complicated. I feel like I got my MBA in HUD financing because the seller was taking it out of a HUD contract. And I think at the end, the stack of papers that I filled out and prepared was about this thick. But it took about a year and a half to put that deal together, and we closed on the 50 houses. And that was, again, just one of those, like, okay, here we go. And I'm not sure how I'm going to do this, but we ended up flipping out of 50 houses in 21 months. Again, there was no financing for buy and hold. So we didn't have the option to be able to hang on to them. We only had one exit strategy, and that was to sell them all. I wish I owned them today, but I don't, because we didn't have the financing for it. In fact, I had to talk to 40 banks, 40 banks, because no one
Wow.
wanted to do the project. And the 40th one said, I don't know if we want to do it, but we're willing to sit our financing committee down with you and hash out. And for 6 hours, I sat with their loan committee, and we had a big whiteboard, and we figured it all out over 6 hours. And they said, okay, we can live with this, structure. But it meant, flipping out of them. And so we flipped. I was the listing agent. I was the designer. I was the overseer of 5 different, general contractors and all their teams. And I was just like running from house to house, and we remodeled and flipped out of them in 21 months. It was crazy, but it was crazy fun. And it was crazy fun. I've never had more fun in my career, because I basically was able to transform like this whole entire neighborhood, because the houses were
I was going to ask,
lining,
were they all close to each other?
Lining one like really beautiful, like kind of winding road, and they were both on both sides. So we started at the beginning, and they were in bad shape. So I mean, you drive through that neighborhood and every single house looked horrible. So we had to kind of start like a builder would start. We started at the beginning of the neighborhood, because we didn't want people to feel like they were buying a redone house in this really poor looking neighborhood. So it started at the beginning, and I will never forget my first buyer, because I explained to her, I'm like, I know you're buying a remodeled house and the rest of the neighborhood looks terrible, but you just have to believe me that the rest of the neighborhood is going to look like your house. And she said, I think I do believe you. I buy in, and I'm going to buy this house, but you better make the rest of the neighborhood look good. So I kept that promise, and we're still friends today. But
oh, that's great. That's
but
great.
just to
That's
encourage, all of our listeners, it's like, you start with an idea, you don't really know how you're going to do it, but serendipitously, the right people come into your life, the right ideas come into your life. And it isn't a quick thing that always happens when we want it to. Sometimes we have these ideas, but 16 years later, they come into fruition. We don't think, oh, let's buy a multifamily, and the next day here we're writing a contract. And I think, Instagram and social media can portray that real estate success happens really fast. Get into real estate, and the next day you're a millionaire. And I know it hasn't happened for you that way, and it certainly hasn't happened for me and many others that I know. But the key is just get in, just say yes, write down a goal, start somewhere, find somebody that can show you the way, and then just take action and go. And it's not always going to go your way. But, that's what makes it interesting, is like the bumps and bruises.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You got to have that. You pivot, you learn, and you move on.
Yeah.
That's, there's something that I wanted to chat with you about, because it's something that's going on for us now in California. You guys were a little bit more the leaders, all the DADUs.
Yes.
So California, I was on a webinar with Thatch.
Oh, love
recently.
Thatch. Yes. Oh, he's one of my favorite people.
And he DM'd me, and he's like, dude, California, they're passing that bill. He's like, you better get ready. And so they finally passed AB 1033, which allows us to now sell off the ADU as a condo.
Good for you.
So right now we have San Jose, Berkeley, and Santa Monica that are looking into it. So basically they just passed the bill, and they're like, hey, now you guys have to figure out, who's going to allow it. I knew San Jose would probably be the ones that would start it. But at the same time that was happening, I really wanted to get into doing some more development here in Silicon Valley, and not in the Midwest. I wanted something a little closer. And like you just said, I put that out to the universe, and, maybe a year later, we got a new development, and we're going to start it in about a month.
Nice.
And that gentleman has got the same vision as me as far as ADUs and development. And he's got a lot of energy. And we met on Instagram. I found his page. I invited him on my podcast, and we got done with the podcast, and I'm like, dude, we're going to do some
I love
projects.
it.
I like your energy.
I
You know
love
what I
it.
mean? And
I
it was,
listened to that episode
and
yesterday, actually.
which one?
The one
Wait.
with the guy that talked about the development and the DADUs.
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah, I listened to it yesterday, actually. Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe it's not the same guy, but it was a really good interview.
Yeah, who was it? Well, the gentleman, I don't think his is released yet, but
you did
his name's
talk to.
Sergio.
Okay, this is a different person. Then you did have a
Yeah,
great
because I've been going
interview
so
yesterday.
crazy on this
I know.
episode on
Yeah.
ADUs, and the big part of it is, especially in San Jose, it's expensive. You know, a house is well over $1 million, and if you can get a brand new 2-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,000 square foot, you know, with parking in a good school district for under $1 million, I think that's going to solve some of the housing issues that we are encountering. I mean, it's not solving everything. It's not going to do it all, but it's definitely going to get another product out there for people to have an option with. So
I'm all about it.
I'm
Stephen.
looking forward to it.
I think it's the new. It is a new strategy that now gets us back to some cash flow. You know, for a while we were watching prices go up, and of course interest rates are going up, and so you know our newer investors are looking at a purchase and they're saying, how do I get this to cover itself? How does the rent cover the mortgage even? And so now when you can buy a little single family and rent that out, build a DADU for the fraction of what it will be worth when it's done, and now you have 2 single family houses on one lot. Now you can start looking at some cash flow again. So I think it's solving that part of it from an investor standpoint, but it's also bringing in, you know, the much needed housing that we are going to need. We need it now, but we're definitely going to need it in the future. And very exciting that they're going to allow us to condoize it and sell them separate. So I'm talking about this to my folks as this is a new flipping strategy. Because again, so I'll give you an example.
Okay.
One of our clients yesterday, we got them into contract on a little single family home for $350,000. And I know that's not San Jose prices, but it was a great deal here in Tacoma. And the backyard is actually going to allow 2 DADUs. So imagine they already own the dirt. You don't have to pay for a separate sewer connection. You don't have to pay, you know, so there's all these development costs that you don't have to pay, but you can build 2 more houses on that same lot, that free lot. So, I mean, they're probably going to have, you know, a good 350,000 of instant equity once those 2 are built. But the main thing is that they're going to actually be able to cash flow those properties. So it's pretty exciting what's happening. And Tacoma is newish to this. So it's only been allowed here for a couple of years. Seattle is way far ahead. And which is Batch has paved the way in Seattle, and he's teaching people how to do it in their own communities as it's allowed. And of course, I love Thatch. I mean, he's a mentor from afar, but just love what he's doing. But yeah, lots of exciting stuff. And I think DADUs is probably one of the most exciting things that's happened in real estate in a long time.
I agree. I think what we're going to have to do is get you back on down the road here. And we could have a whole nother episode
can we?
On development.
Let's do it. Yeah, let's just do it. We're doing.
I was just thinking that. I'm like, we're already an hour in. Yeah. I go, we can talk. This is a whole nother episode.
This is a whole nother episode. Yeah, we can talk about, we have about 100 units in development for multifamily from ground up.
Oh, wow.
A little townhouse project. But the DAD, I have to tell you, the DADUs, you know, doing the new construction stuff and all that is fun. And it's, you know, exciting, but I have not been more excited than the DADU strategy. And I think it's an entry in for people that are, you know, listening to this. It's like, it's very entry level friendly. And so if you want to get back on and just talk about that and all the strategy around it, Stephen, I would love to. I'm all in. I'm here for you. Yeah. Love it.
Let's do it. Yeah. I will have Angel reach out. Yeah, we'll do this. We'll do this sooner than later. And I'll break the way that I'm doing this because I think it's a great topic. I think
do too.
We could dive into it.
I look forward to that.
Sounds good. Where can people find you?
I'm at AnnCurryHomes.com, our website, and then Ann Curry Homes on social media. And then follow us. Go to our website. We have great content. We have free events that we host here in Washington, and you could also watch online. And lots of really good resources out there on our website as well. So Yeah.
That's awesome.
So love it. And
I appreciate you coming on, and I'll link everything here in the episode too,
Yeah.
but I really appreciate you jumping on, and I'm glad I didn't have to cancel from being sick.
Me too. And I look forward to our second episode. Okay.
Yeah. Thanks so much.
Take care.
Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning into our show, where we hope you found inspiration and gained valuable insights. If you enjoyed this conversation and want to stay updated on our latest episodes, be sure to subscribe to our podcast and share it with others who might benefit from it. We appreciate your support and look forward to bringing you more candid conversations and breakthrough moments in the future. Until next time, take care and keep exploring new ideas and strategies.